It was 12:37 a.m. when Thomas Drell finally turned onto his long, gravel driveway, exhausted from his third consecutive night shift at the plant. The high beams from his truck barely pierced the fog hanging low across the country road. His fingers were stiff, his eyelids heavier than they should have been. He'd driven this route hundreds of times before. But tonight, something felt off. As he reached the foot of the driveway, his headlights swept past the mailbox, and that's when he hit the brakes. Standing just a few feet from the entrance, partially hidden in the tall grass near the edge of the ditch, was a girl. Pale. Thin. Maybe 13 or 14 years old. No shoes. Wearing what looked like a white nightgown, soaked from the damp air. Her dark hair clung to her face like wet string. She wasn't moving. She just stood there, facing his truck, staring. Thomas sat frozen behind the wheel. The girl didn't flinch, didn't step forward, didn't speak, just stared. He leaned out the window and called to her. "Hey, you okay? Are you lost?" No response. No shift of the body. Just those wide, hollow eyes. Something about her presence was wrong. Not just the odd time or the weird location, but something deeper. Animal instinct told him to stay in the vehicle. But his conscience pushed harder. With the engine still running, he slowly opened the door and stepped out. The gravel crunched beneath his boots as he walked toward her, cautious but concerned. "You need help?" he asked again, his voice quieter now, like he didn't want to disturb something that shouldn't be there. She blinked. Then, slowly, raised one hand and pointed toward the woods behind his house. Thomas followed the direction of her finger. The trees loomed like black sentinels in the moonlight. Thick. Still. Silent. The kind of woods you never stepped into at night, even if you'd lived near them your whole life. He turned back to the girl, but she was gone. Gone. Just like that. His breath hitched. There'd been no sound. No running. Just empty grass where she'd been. A cold sweat broke across his neck. He backed toward the truck, scanning every shadow, heart thumping in his ears. Slamming the door shut, he locked it and drove straight up the driveway without stopping. When he reached the house, the porch light was flickering, something it had never done before. The bulb had been changed just 2 days ago. He hesitated on the porch before going in. But the moment he closed the door behind him, he felt it. He wasn't alone. The air in the house had changed, dense and charged. Like static before a lightning strike. The dog, Benny, was nowhere to be found. Usually, Benny would be barking at the door before Thomas even parked. But now the house was silent. Too silent. Thomas walked slowly through the living room, toward the hallway. And that's when he saw the muddy footprints. Small. Barefoot. Leading from the front door, down the hallway, toward the guest room. He followed them, breath tight in his chest. When he reached the door to the guest room, he hesitated. The door was slightly ajar. He gently pushed it open with his boot. Empty. Just the guest bed, neatly made. The window still closed. No sign of the girl. Until he turned around. And saw her standing at the end of the hall again. Only this time, her eyes were completely black. Thomas staggered back into the room and slammed the door shut. He turned the lock and backed away from it, reaching for his phone. But his phone was dead. He was alone. Or so he thought. A soft whisper broke the silence. Not from the hallway, but from the corner of the room behind the dresser. A voice like wind through dead leaves, "She wanted you to see." Thomas whipped around. No one there. The doorknob began to turn. Not rattle. Not shake. But slowly, deliberately turn. Then stop. He backed toward the closet, heart in his throat, when a loud bang echoed through the house, from the front door. Then again. Bang. Bang. Then silence. Thomas waited, frozen, for what felt like hours. At some point, exhaustion gave way to unconsciousness. He collapsed in the corner. When the sun rose, everything was normal. The footprints were gone. Benny was back, wagging his tail. The front door was locked. Thomas chalked it up to exhaustion. Maybe a waking nightmare. Maybe sleep deprivation. Until he found something lying on the gravel near the bottom of the driveway later that afternoon, a single, wet, muddy footprint. Too small to be his. And next to it, half buried in the dirt, was a lock of long, black hair. He never worked night shift again. But that wouldn't matter. Because whatever she was, she had already followed him home. Front desk, how may I help you? Yeah, hey, this is room 212. There's a banging sound coming from down the hall. Like, right across from me. Room 209 or something. You mind checking it out? Mason clicked his pen nervously against the marble counter. He hated night shifts at the Evergreen Motor Lodge, but this was the job he landed after losing his apartment and dropping out of community college. Barely enough to survive, and way too much quiet. The kind of quiet that made you hear things. Feel things. He checked the register. Room 209 hadn't been occupied for 2 weeks. Renovations, bad wiring. That room wasn't even accessible. And yet, the voice on the other end of the line continued. It's loud, man. Like someone's throwing furniture. What the hell's going on in there? Mason forced a chuckle. Might be the pipes. You know, these old motels, dude, it's not the pipes, the caller snapped. It's banging. Like fists on walls. Mason promised he'd go check it out. He didn't want to. The hallway to the 200s always gave him a weird feeling. Like you were being watched from behind the old vending machine that never worked. The wallpaper peeled in waves, the lights flickered when the AC kicked in, and the old brass key to room 209 hadn't been touched in weeks. He grabbed the master key ring, grabbed a flashlight, and made his way upstairs. The second floor was darker than usual. One of the hallway lights was completely out. Room 209 was about halfway down. As he approached, he slowed his pace. The carpet muffled his footsteps, but every breath felt loud. The silence wasn't total. He could hear the distant hum of traffic from the highway, but something about the air here felt off. Dense. Still. He paused in front of 209. It was quiet now. Too quiet. Mason leaned forward and pressed his ear to the door. For a second, nothing. Then, boom. A heavy thud slammed against the other side of the door. He jumped back. Another boom. Then silence again. He fumbled with the keys, finding the one marked 209. His fingers shook as he inserted it into the lock. The door creaked open. Darkness. No lights. Just the faint ambient glow from the hallway spilling across the floor. He swept the flashlight across the room. Everything was dusty. Unused. Bed still made, TV unplugged, nightstand empty. But in the far corner, the chair was turned to face the wall. And there were scratch marks on the floor beneath it. Deep grooves, like it had been dragged. Mason stepped inside, shoes crunching on bits of broken ceiling tile. The smell was musty, moldy, like a basement sealed for decades. He moved toward the chair. The flashlight flickered. When it stabilized, he saw something on the wall. Writing. Dozens of scratches. Single word, don't, over and over and over. Don't. He backed away quickly, chest tightening. That's when he heard the whisper. A woman's voice, low, raspy. Like a breath exhaled in reverse. Right next to his ear. But no one was there. He turned to leave, but the door slammed shut before he could reach it. Locked. He grabbed the knob, twisting, pulling. It wouldn't budge. Suddenly, a loud thud came from inside the room. Then another. The chair in the corner began to rock, even though no one was sitting in it. Mason stumbled backward as the temperature dropped. The flashlight flickered again. When the light returned, the chair had stopped moving. And someone was sitting in it. Long, tangled hair. A woman in a tattered hospital gown. Her feet didn't touch the floor. Her head was bowed forward, motionless. Mason gasped, dropped the flashlight. It rolled under the bed. The room plunged into darkness. He backed into the corner, reaching for his phone. But his pocket was empty. No phone. No flashlight. Just darkness. And breathing. Slow. Rhythmic. Not his own. He wasn't alone. From the direction of the chair came the sound of something rising, bones creaking, cloth dragging across fabric. She was standing now. He could feel it. Then, click. The room light flickered on. Empty. The chair was against the wall again. The door creaked open, as if nothing had ever happened. Mason didn't question it. He bolted, heart pounding, all the way back to the front desk. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't write it in the log. But 2 hours later, room 212 called again. "Hey, I thought you checked it." "I did," Mason said. "No one's in there." A pause. Then who's standing in the window right now? Mason froze. He turned toward the hallway. Room 209's curtains were wide open. And behind the sheer fabric stood the silhouette of a woman, her head tilted, watching. Just watching. The next morning, the manager found Mason's name tag sitting on the counter. The camera showed him locking the lobby doors at 4:17 a.m. He never clocked out. He never went home. And room 209's key was missing. To this day, sometimes at exactly 4:17 a.m., that room door unlocks itself. And the hallway fills with the smell of mold and something else. Formaldehyde. It was supposed to be a weekend escape. Bryce, Jay, and Melissa had planned the camping trip weeks ago. No cell reception, no work emails, just forest, fire, and freedom. The Sleeping Woods, as the locals called it, were 60,000 acres of dense pines and winding trails that swallowed GPS signals and made you forget the modern world even existed. They arrived Friday afternoon, pitched the tent before sunset, and built a fire that crackled into the blue-black evening. By 11 p.m., only dying embers remained. The three of them curled up in sleeping bags inside the tent, tired but buzzed from too many marshmallows and ghost stories. Bryce was the first to drift off. Then Jay. And Melissa lay there, eyes open, watching the nylon ceiling of the tent pulse faintly with each whisper of wind. At some point, she must have nodded off. Because when she opened her eyes again, it was pitch black. No moon. No sounds. No firelight glow through the tent walls. Just darkness. She sat up. Her breath caught. Jay's sleeping bag was empty. "Jay," she whispered. No response. She nudged Bryce. "Jay's gone." Bryce groaned, rubbed his eyes. "What?" "He's not here." He sat up groggily, looked around the tent. The zipper was partially open. Bryce cursed under his breath, grabbed the flashlight, and unzipped the flap the rest of the way. Cold air rushed in. Jay was nowhere in sight. Maybe he went to pee. Melissa offered, but her voice didn't sound convinced. Bryce swept the flashlight across the surrounding trees. Nothing but trunks and blackness. The beam seemed to die before it hit anything useful. "Jay?" Bryce called out. Only silence answered. Not even crickets. No wind. Dead quiet. Then, a crunch. From deep in the woods. Footsteps. They both froze. Another crunch. Then 2 footsteps. Then 3. But too fast. Too heavy. Whatever it wasn't walking. It was running. Directly toward them. Bryce dropped the flashlight in panic. It rolled on the ground, spinning the light wildly. Melissa grabbed his arm. Then everything stopped. No more footsteps. Just the spinning flashlight beam, now illuminating the edge of the trees. That's when they saw it. Someone, or something, was standing just behind a tree, barely visible. Pale skin. Naked. Still. Head tilted. Watching. Bryce whispered, "Jay?" No response. Then a second figure appeared. Just behind it. Same stillness. Same posture. Melissa backed into the tent. "Let's go. We need to go." Bryce nodded and zipped up the tent flap. Seconds later, scratching. Long, deliberate claws against the nylon fabric. Not tearing. Just testing. Melissa was crying now, whispering, "It's not him. That's not Jay. That's not him." The scratching stopped. Bryce grabbed his pocket knife. Silence again. Then, a voice. From just outside the tent. Jay's voice. "Guys, hey. Let me in. Please." But it didn't sound right. It sounded too flat. No emotion. Like a recording. Melissa shook her head. "That's not him." The voice again. "Let me in. Then, let me in." Screamed now. Repeating. Over and over. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." The voice multiplied. Echoed. Surrounded them. Melissa screamed, hands over her ears. Bryce clutched his knife and unzipped the tent in a panic, but there was nothing outside. No figures. No Jay. Just silence again. And the flashlight, lying still, its battery dying. They bolted. No shoes. No gear. Just running through the blackwoods with no trail, no light, no direction. Branches cut their legs. Thorns ripped their arms. They didn't stop. Not until Bryce collapsed near a dry creek bed. Melissa dropped beside him, sobbing, lungs on fire. Where are we?" "I don't know," he gasped. Above them, the trees loomed, unnatural, almost skeletal. The moon had vanished. Bryce looked around and realized something terrifying. These trees, they'd passed them before. That knot in the bark. That split stump. They were going in circles. He pulled Melissa up. "We're being led. This isn't a mistake." That's when they heard the laughing. A child's voice. Then a woman's. Then deep, guttural chuckles. All around them. They turned in every direction. Shadows moved behind trunks, just out of reach. And then, Jay stepped out of the trees. But something was wrong. He wasn't walking. He was gliding. His feet never touched the ground. His eyes were gone, two black, hollow voids. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. He lifted one arm and pointed toward the tent they had just escaped. But it was here. Right in front of them. Perfect. Standing. Untouched. How? Melissa whispered. They turned to run again, and froze. Because behind them was another tent. Same one. Two of them now. Identical. And from inside both tents, they could hear themselves. Crying. Screaming. Begging to wake up. Melissa looked down at her hands. They were transparent. Fading. Bryce fell to his knees. No, no. Behind them, Jay whispered one final time. They keep you here. In the dark. Forever. It started with a call. A woman's voice, shaky. I think they're connected. The girl, the room, the woods. They only come at night. Detective Eric Holloway barely heard the message over the static on the tape. The voicemail had been left at 3:03 a.m. from a burner phone later found abandoned in a field outside of Junction, Missouri. That was 3 months ago. He never stopped thinking about it. The girl in the driveway. Room 209. The Sleeping Woods. 3 different towns. 3 unrelated cases. Except for one thing, each event occurred between 2:50 and 3:10 a.m. Each victim reported seeing figures. Each location had 0 EMF signal. And in every case, one word kept surfacing, they. No name. No description. Just they. It had taken months, but Holloway had tracked down what little physical evidence existed: security tapes, cell phone logs, fragments of burned journals. But nothing explained what they were. Until tonight. Because now, it was happening to him. 2:53 a.m., his home. The lights flicker. The air grows dense. And from the baby monitor in his daughter's room, a voice whispers, "She's not yours anymore." Holloway sprints down the hall. Bursts through the door. His daughter is standing in the crib, staring at the wall. Murmuring something. He steps closer. And freezes. She's saying names. Names he knows. Thomas. Mason. Bryce. Melissa. People who were never found. People who shouldn't be in her vocabulary. She turns slowly to look at him, and her eyes aren't hers. They're black. Deep. Ancient. And behind her, just for a second, he sees a silhouette in the corner. Unmoving. Watching. Then it's gone. 3:02 a.m., the radio bursts to life. Static, then a voice, they never leave. They change shape. They wait for night. They wait for you to sleep. His phone dies. No signal. Every light in the house turns off. The hallway stretches longer than it should. Doors appear where there were none. The walls begin to breathe. He clutches the gun from his nightstand. Moves through the house like a hunted animal. Then he hears it. Footsteps upstairs. But he's already upstairs. They echo down the stairwell. Then, knocking. From the front door. He edges toward it, slowly. The peephole is dark. No silhouette. No porch light. Just endless black. The knocking comes again. Then shifts. To the back door. Then the attic door. Then the closet. Always moving. Always one step closer. He realizes then, they're inside already. 3:07 a.m., he finds the hallway full of water. Ankle deep. Cold. And in the reflection, shadows standing beside him. But when he turns, nothing. He looks back at the water. They're closer. He screams. Runs to his daughter's room. She's gone. The crib is burning. Not with fire, but with darkness. Pure, rolling void swallowing the corners of the room. He falls to his knees. And he finally sees it, the pattern. Thomas saw the girl, Mason heard the voice, Bryce and Melissa were pulled into the loop, and now are him. Each one pulled into the same hour. The same trap. Each one disappearing without a trace. Because they don't haunt places. They haunt time. 3 to 3:10 a.m. A dead zone that slides through towns like a mist. picking people, marking them, hollowing them out from the inside, leaving only echoes. 3:10 a.m., everything stops. The lights return. The hallway is normal again. The water is gone. And his daughter's voice calls from behind him, cheerful. "Daddy." He turns. She's standing in the kitchen, smiling. Perfect. But it's not her. It can't be. Because in her hand, she's holding his phone. And on the screen is a video. A video of him sleeping in bed. From outside the window. The footage plays on loop. He drops the gun, falls to his knees, and in the reflection of the microwave door, he sees them. All of them. Thomas, Mason, Jay, Melissa, Bryce. Their faces, warped. Watching him. Mouths moving in sync. Whispering, "Now you belong to the hour." For 17 a.m., Junction, Missouri. A park ranger finds a car still running in the woods. Driver's seat empty. Baby in the back seat, safe, asleep. But no sign of the father. Just a phone on the passenger seat. The last note recorded at 3:09 a.m. A whisper, barely audible, "They only come at night, but you know what the scariest part is? It's 2:58 a.m. right now. You're still awake. And you just read about them. Which means they know you exist. They know you're next. Don't look at the hallway. Don't check the window. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep between 3 o'clock and 3:10. Because when they come for you, there's no waking up.